সবাইকে প্রীতি এবং শুভেচ্ছা জানিয়ে এলকপের সাপ্তাহিক আয়োজন স্বপ্ন দেখে বাংলাদেশ অনুষ্ঠানে সবাইকে স্বাগত জানাচ্ছি এস.এম. মাসুম বিল্লাহ। আপনারা জানেন যে আমরা এই ফোরাম থেকে এম্পাওয়ারমেন্ট থ্রু ল অফ দ্য কমন পিপল এই প্ল্যাটফর্ম থেকে অনুষ্ঠানটা প্রচার করে আসছি এবং আপনারা জানেন যে এলকপ কাজ করে মানুষের আইনি ক্ষমতায়ন, আলোকায়ন এবং মানবাধিকার নিয়ে। So I switch over to English for the sake of our guest. Now, Empowerment Through Law of the Common People organizes this weekly show on ELCOP page. ELCOP works on human rights, enlightenment, empowerment of the common people. And as a part of that, we run this program on every Tuesday. And today, our discussion is on the democracy and human rights in Bangladesh, future implication for election. Now, we have got a very special guest this evening to talk to us. We have been joined by Willem van der Geest, Honorable Visiting Professor, University Livre Brussels. And Dr. Geest was had also worked for European Institute for Asian Studies long ago. He is a Dutch economist. So, Dr. Willem van der Geest, welcome to our show. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you, Masoom, if I may call you that. And I know about you as Dean of Law and also the editor of the Journal of Law. So I'm very, very pleased to contribute to your podcast on this important subject, elections. It's a very, very important issue.
Thank you very much. Dr. Willem, tell us something about your connection to Bangladesh. Is this your first visit to Bangladesh?
Well, I was asked that question yesterday and the day before as well in the various meetings and seminars. And so people can somehow assume, this is a foreign guy, maybe first time, second time, something like that. But I have visited Bangladesh about 50 times.
Oh, really?
Yes.
That's it.
And it goes back a long time because I first worked here in 1984, 85, 86. At that time, I was a junior economist attached to a team working with the planning commission, doing technical calculations and background research.
So you worked with the planning commission of Bangladesh?
Yes, that's correct.
That's great.
Back in the 80s.
And I was also Googling your name and found this UPL book co-edited by you on economic development or something like that.
With Dr. Chaudhary, we co-edited a book based on a project we did with the Bangladesh Institute for Development Studies. And that was really a comparative study across South Asia, looking at India, Nepal, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, etc., on international trade and economic reform, the relationship between that. Yeah, it was a very good project, I think, important discussion. Also implications.
So you have this experience of watching Bangladesh from a closer position. Do you see any change of Bangladesh this time?
40 years, I see tremendous change. It's a complete transformation. When I first worked, I stayed at on the edge of Gulshan. Then I had to go, say, to Dhanmondi for my for the UNDP office, or to Shari Bangla Nagor for the planning commission. It would take 20 minutes, maybe 15 on a good day. Now, 20 minutes, you must be dreaming.
Now we have a total of 20 minutes.
Yes, unless you have a helicopter, it's nearly impossible.
Right.
So but okay, on a more serious level, of course, I see enormous transformation in the industry. I see enormous transformation in agriculture. It's become much more intensive and much more effective. I see enormous transformation in services. We had only Grindlays Bank as an international bank. Now we have a whole array of banks, both domestic and international, like Standard Chartered, of course, but also BRAC and lots of others. So those are major changes, and it shows the economy has matured.
And of course, you are also watching this tremendous transformation in the technological advancement.
Yes.
Since, I mean, in last 12 years or 12 or 14 years or so, there has been a huge revolution in the technological advancement as well.
Yeah, just going back to my early experiences, when we then needed to call up our colleagues, we usually used to go to Hotel Sheraton and send them a fax. And then once they received the fax, they would call us, collect, because we couldn't possibly afford those kind of rates that we had to pay. It was like, for a kind of business conversation, working out some, details with other technical guys, we might spend half an hour, would cost us maybe $100, something like that. True. Now on WhatsApp, we don't even know what it costs. So, insignificant for everybody, not only for international people, but everybody has a Grameen phone. The drivers have a Grameen phone, and it works at a fraction of the cost. So these are very important technological advances, absolutely. And Bangladesh, on this example of ICT and particularly telephony, it has done very, very well. The services are excellent.
Now, when we talk about this success of Bangladesh, particularly in poverty reduction or alleviation sector, back in 1970s, we had 7 crore people. In 80s, 10 crore. Then now it's almost 18 crore plus. And by now, the food security of Bangladesh have increased a lot. In terms of sustainable development, we have progressed a lot. How do you explain the success of Bangladesh in terms of poverty alleviation?
Right. So the stats that you just quoted are absolutely reliable based on the household surveys, the most detailed surveys of the country. But I still think that the country could have even faster reduced the incidence of poverty. I'm very happy to see that it's gone down from 40 to say 18 if you take the higher norm, and if you take the extreme poverty, it's gone down from something like 15 or 20 to 4 to 5%. But I would like to eradicate all poverty from this country. And I must say, I'm not alone. In fact, even the Prime Minister in her address yesterday said the same. We must eradicate poverty all the way. And for that to reach into this last group, which is in a way the harder group, the more difficult group, we have to expand the social safety nets. Because there may be old people, there may be handicapped people, or there may be people that are excluded from the labor market for other reasons, including...
Dr. William, if I ask you that which one will you pick? For example, I give you development.
Sorry.
Or I give you development on one hand, I give you good governance on the other. Which one will you pick?
I don't, in all respects, share the presumption of the question. I don't think there is a trade-off. These are complementary processes. And with economic development, in the material sense, you can only get up to a certain level. You need human development, right? And, the UNDP has, of course, been publishing the Human Development Indicator now for 25 or 30 years. And it's essential that people's education, people's level of education, the quality of education, you need to invest more and more and more into that. So if you look at, a country like Korea or my own country, the Netherlands, the amounts of public investments and also the amounts of resources that individuals privately put to it, enormous, can be 10, 20% of the GDP. And so that we need that needs to become the main priority in Bangladesh. I observe that, if you have people working in your house or laying bricks or masonry, they are quite well skilled. But if you look for the level of skills above that, say reading a drawing to make a cupboard or a table, whatever, reading, that kind of skill is still quite limited.
Right.
And that, of course, numerical skills quite limited. So we need to push that boundary of people's capability. So that's the human development, skills development that I'm really emphasizing, where the country must now try to do as much as possible. And then, of course, I don't know why I say "of course" twice, but I would like to emphasize it. Sorry. But certainly, it's not only people; it's also the institutions. Right. So you need institutional development, which means that, for example, people build up companies, but sometime they may wish to retire or wish to step back from that company. Often succession is a big problem. Why? They have not created a team around them able to take over, because it's all kind of around the one person, the founder. But where is the team that will provide continuity in the long term? That's the sustainability aspect in one sort of dimension. But it's not only succession, it's also about accountability. To what extent can organizations explain how they're doing things, why they're doing things, pay wages in a fair way? Why does this man get this and that man get that? Those kind of things about accountability, transparency, those kind of processes that are needed. That needs decades of development, very careful planning. Of course, government does it to some extent, but the private sector, there's a lot to be done.
Yes, of course.
For smaller.
And when you refer to accountability, we also must talk about the political system and political stability as well, because ultimately it is the political stability of a country that leads a country towards development. And one of the significant area, perhaps, Dr. William, it also has not gone unnoticed by you. Bangladesh has tremendous success in women empowerment in terms of political and as well as economic empowerment of women. We can talk about the garments industry, we can talk about the rural healthcare system that's also been recognized by the UN system as well, by the United Nations as well. So how do you view this Bangladesh's progress in the field of women empowerment? Because in Bangladesh, the prime minister is a woman, the speaker is a woman. Even in the current parliament, the opposition leader was also a woman, and the other big opposition party's leader was also a woman. So Bangladesh has made a significant progress, irrespective of being a moderate Muslim country. It has got a lot in the field of women's empowerment. How do you view this?
Absolutely, I fully agree. And in addition to those examples of leaders, like the country's leader, you find women everywhere working, contributing in the universities, in the banks, everywhere, literally. Of course, in the industry, a large share of the garments industry's workers is female. So yes, there's been I think that's, if we say there's been a transformation in Bangladesh, this is definitely one major component of it. So there, I think the country has done well. Doesn't mean that you're done, right? There is more to go. And there's also some concern about some backsliding. When I first worked here back in the 80s, it was very rare to see a woman who was kind of, wearing the veil or burqa or anything like that, niqab. And now this is much more prevalent. And sometimes I feel, why is that? Is it still a form of patriarchy, or is it really a choice they are making themselves? So here we talk about values and processes that will take a longer time to change, and for women to have fully equal rights, not only in the letter of the law or before the Constitution, but also in the real world, in practice. There are still challenges, that I could point to.
Thank you. You have seen Bangladesh from a broader perspective, from a European perspective, international relation, building of alliances, regional or international matters for a developing democracy like Bangladesh. And Bangladesh has made, tremendous success in this respect for last 14 or 15 years. But even then, we have got an election to come in December. So regarding this election, the international relationship of Bangladesh has been polarized. Many international community members have commented upon Bangladesh. For example, I can tell you American interest as well as European Union's interest about Bangladesh's upcoming election, and they have imposed many conditions, many standards to achieve. How do you view this international community's interest about Bangladesh's upcoming election?
Right. So, on coming back to your first point, I think for a developing country in general, or for a small country, relatively small country in general, like my own country, the Netherlands, it's very important to keep good relationships with as many countries or as many groupings of countries as you can do. So, for example, my country, Netherlands, very active in the EU, very active in the UN. We're not part of G7, but in the G20, we have a role to play, and we are very active to build all these relationships as much as possible. Bangladesh is doing that too, and it has also some regional groupings. Of course, SAARC, unfortunately, not going forward very much because of internal tensions between other members, not Bangladesh, but India, Pakistan in particular. And Bangladesh is active in BIMSTEC, which is another regional grouping. So I think it's been quite a great achievement, that you have managed to keep, open relations, good talking terms with China, with India, etc. So that's on the first point. Now, some of the critiques that people in Bangladesh have on US because of the US lecturing Bangladesh on democracy, whereas the state of democracy in the US itself is at peril, as we have seen after the last elections. Yeah, so I think that is a fair critique, but it should not be pushed too far. I think that Bangladesh should remain on the democratic path as much as possible, and no backsliding into authoritarian governments. That would be quite a negative. So, in my view, quoting one of your well-known economists, you can't have a competitive economy without competitive elections or competitive political system, including in the case of elections, where it comes into play. So I also find that a very pertinent observation. And you see in recent years that opposition has been weakened. It's actually very weak. We're far away from a two-party situation. It's kind of a fragmented situation. If you look at the shares of AL votes and seats compared to others, it's very small. So I would hope that this election, first of all, I would hope it will be a violence-free election. This terrible incidents of accidents and throwing petrol bombs into buses and terrible things like that will not take place in this coming election season.
We also hope so. We also hope so that
it's really
atrocities will not
very important.
be taking place anymore. Dr. William, I am running out of time, but I have one last question for you.
All right.
That we have this dilemma. It is not only true for Bangladesh, it is also true for other developing countries as well. Now, we talk about a state sovereignty, a state's internal affair. Election is an internal affair of a country. The citizen of a country should make their own destiny, should decide about their own, political affairs. This is a matter of sovereign sanctity. On the other hand, being a member of global community, you cannot keep yourself isolated. So a state is not an isolated island. So they have to take into account their friends' comments, their development partners' suggestions. So how do we strike a balance between internal affair as well as maintaining the suggestions of our good friends from abroad?
Right. Well, it's a very good question, and we could probably debate it, talk about it for hours, and to some extent debate it. So the experience of the European Union is, of course, sharing sovereignty. So we have common policies for lots of areas, security, agriculture, name it. So there is a sharing of sovereignty, which has made us stronger, especially in a small country like the Netherlands by its own. Even though it's high-tech and wealthy and rich, it still would not count for much. And it's doing much better because it's part of the European Union. So that's one, sharing of sovereignty doesn't mean that you lose something, you also gain something.
True.
And that's, I think, the key point. So, is it, say, election monitoring? Is it interference or is it positive? On the whole, I would argue, and I would say, and I think there's evidence that monitoring works, right? If you have monitoring, for example, about compliance in the garment industry, you can improve the situation in the industry, both at the technical level and at the level of, say, labor rights. So this monitoring has positive effects for people in the sector, that are directly affected. So in the case of election monitoring, I would argue the same, that if the elections, because of the monitoring, are conducted in a better way, hopefully a violence-free and a fair way, then that's a benefit to the country and to the people of the country. And in that sense, I would, there may be a cost, maybe the room to maneuver is somewhat reduced. But on the other hand, it also asks parties and stakeholders to play by the rules, play the game in a fair way, and that would be a great gain. So, yes, I see your dilemma, but I think the trade-off is positive.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. In between this dilemma, I'm sure that the people of Bangladesh will be able to devise a suitable mechanism for them in order to keep the political stability, the will of development, and certainly Bangladesh will maintain its current progress, will make it more relevant in international forum. Professor Dr. Willem van der Geest, I must thank you for joining with me this evening. And I know that you have been very busy. You have made this time for ELCOP audience. We thank you very much from the core of our heart.
Well, it's a great pleasure to be able to contribute to your podcast, which I think is called something like Dreams for Bangladesh.
Bangladesh. You know some of the words in Bangla. Yes, Bangladesh has a dream. Bangladesh washes a dream. Yes, Bangladesh has a dream.
Okay.
Bangladesh. Yes.
Right. So, Masum, keep on dreaming, aloud and active. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. দর্শক কথা বলছিলাম উইলিয়াম ভ্যান ডার গেস্ট ডক্টর, ভিজিটিং প্রফেসর, ইউনিভার্সিটি লেব্রেদা ব্রাসেলসের, খুব ডাচ ইকোনমিস্ট। তার সঙ্গে কথা বলে অনেক ভালো লাগলো এবং বাংলাদেশের উন্নয়ন, প্রত্যাশা, প্রাপ্তি এসব নিয়ে কথা বললাম। আমরা আবারও আগামী পর্বে স্বপ্ন দেখে বাংলাদেশের অন্য আরেকজন অতিথি নিয়ে হাজির হব। আমাদের সঙ্গে থাকবেন। অনেক ধন্যবাদ এবং শুভকামনা জানাচ্ছি। ডক্টর গিস, থ্যাংক ইউ সো ভেরি মাচ।
থ্যাংক ইউ।